Hi, guys, and welcome to Suffer the Little Children, a true crime podcast giving voices back to the victims of child abuse and shining a harsh spotlight on the parents, guardians, and caretakers who silence them. I'm your host, Lane, and this is episode 12, Amari Boone. On April 10th, 2020, a 3-year-old boy arrived in the emergency room at Cook Children's Medical Center in Fort Worth, Texas. His caretakers, a couple who had been fostering the little boy and his 19-month-old brother, and who were also friends of the boy's parents, had told doctors the little boy had been feeling unwell and running a fever, and they finally brought him to the emergency room when he suffered a seizure. Doctors felt the multiple severe injuries the boy had suffered were inconsistent with the foster father's stories, and after the boy died 2 days later on Easter Sunday, the Fort Worth Police Department's Crimes Against Children unit began investigating the boy's death as a homicide. The parents had warned CPS about previous injuries their son had suffered while in the care of their foster parents, but no action was taken. To date, no arrests have been made. This is the infuriating story of Amari Boone. My sources for today's episode are the Dallas Morning News, GoFundMe, NBC-DFW, KHOU, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Facebook, Cook Children's Center for Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect, CBS Dallas Fort Worth, childhelp.org, helpandhope.org, Help Guide, Perform Care New Jersey, Family Connections of New Jersey, National Institute of Mental Health, SAMHSA's Disaster Distress Helpline, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, Crisis Text Line, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and so much personal experience. Before I dig into Amari's story, just a little heads up. This episode is going to focus heavily on Amari and the circumstances surrounding his murder, but in honor of May being Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm also going to talk about an issue that may have contributed to his death, and that is the rise in severe child abuse injuries and deaths during this unprecedented time of global quarantine. Even though Child Abuse Prevention Month has passed, this topic desperately needs to be addressed. I'm also going to arm you with some tools you can use to help yourself and your family stay balanced during the COVID-19 crisis. I hope you and your loved ones are staying healthy, safe, and socially distant. Between March 17th, when the quarantine essentially began, and April 23rd, 9 children ages 4 or younger were admitted to Cook Children's Medical Center in Fort Worth for injuries from child abuse the hospital attributes to stresses from the COVID-19 pandemic. 3 of those 9 children admitted to Cook Children's have died. On average, the hospital sees 6 child abuse deaths per year. These 3 deaths took place between March 17th and April 12th, within the space of a month. Dr. Jamie Kaufman, medical director of the Cook Children's Center for Prevention and Child Abuse and Neglect and the center's care team, said, "We usually only average 6 deaths a year from abuse at Cook Children's, and now we've had 2 children die on the same day. This is an issue related to stress."
Thursday night, we had one child admitted with, unfortunately, life-threatening injuries that they succumbed to. Some of these abuse victims have started as corporal punishment that the parent was very frustrated or angry when they did it, and it resulted in injury. That's the concern, is are these families under more stress related to financial issues, whether it's lost jobs or concern for their job?
The hospital predicted the increase in abuse cases based on the similar increase in child abuse cases during the recession of 2008 and 2009.
We also saw similar types of things happen during the recession, where in our trauma department, the most common cause of trauma death in children was motor vehicle collisions. And during the recession, that changed to abusive head trauma. And I don't want to see that again.
Families are experiencing a whole new level of stress under the dark cloud of the COVID-19 pandemic. Not only are people in quarantine essentially trapped under the same roof with very little opportunity to escape each other, but many people have lost a significant portion, if not all, of their income. Parents are finding themselves responsible for the day-to-day oversight of their children's schooling, which can be extremely stressful. On top of that, news about the virus is ever present on social media and on TV, which are our only windows to the outside world at the moment. Dr. Kaufman said, "It's heartbreaking. We've seen a substantial increase in serious child abuse cases at Cook Children's recently. We can't say for certain if the effects of COVID-19 are driving this increase. All we can do right now is sound the alarm about what we are seeing." To honor Child Abuse Awareness Month in April, Cook Children's staff planted 2,055 blue pinwheels outside the hospital, representing each child who visited the medical center due to abuse in 2019. Dr. Anu Partab, MD, Director for Cook Children's Center for Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect, said, "It's concerning to see this spike coincide with the pandemic, especially without knowing when it will come to an end or the ultimate toll it will take on our communities. With stay-at-home orders in effect, coupled with the loss of jobs, support systems, and routines, the results can be disastrous." Dr. Kaufman said, "We know that families are under more stress, whether related to income or children being out of school. There's a lot of pressure on parents and caregivers right now." Dr. Donald Plumley is the medical director for pediatric trauma at Arnold Palmer Hospital in Orlando, Florida, where medical personnel has seen a similarly concerning increase in severe child abuse injuries. Dr. Plumley said, "There are children with, I'm talking multiple fractures, head injuries that go to the operating room, severe burns. These are critical." Another problem, compounding the stresses within families, is the fact that children being isolated from staff and students at school means abuse that may have previously been noticed and reported is now going undetected. Alina Dosky, the director of clinical training at the Dallas Children's Advocacy Center, said,
"We're not naive to the fact that abuse is still ongoing, and there may be some more severe cases due to the ongoing stress."
Now, with kids not being in school, where we know that teachers and school personnel are some of our leading reporters of child abuse, eyes on is a little bit harder. 2 of the deaths at Cook Children's occurred on the same day. Both 4-year-old Stetson Blackburn and 3-year-old Erika Taylor died on March 21st. Stetson arrived by ambulance and was pronounced dead at 10:40 a.m., while Erika died at about 2 p.m. Erika was covered in bruises and her death has been ruled a homicide. Stetson's death is still being investigated. The third child abuse death at Cook Children's attributed to the pandemic was 3-year-old Amari Boone. On Friday, April 10, 2020, Fort Worth police responded to Cook Children's Medical Center on a report of a child being treated for severe head trauma. The child was Amari, a beautiful little boy with a shock of curly black hair, often tamed into a ponytail or braids, and the big brother to 19-month-old Levi, both of whom had been in foster care since 2018. Doctors who examined the tiny 3-year-old suspected his injuries were caused by child abuse and contacted the Fort Worth Police Department. 2 days after being admitted to the hospital in a coma, Amari was declared brain dead, and he was removed from life support. At 1:19 a.m. on Easter Sunday, Amari died. How did this happen? Amari DeMontre Boone was born on June 9, 2016, to parents Ariana George and Rodney Boone. Ariana spoke to a news station about her son.
He is amazing. He is just the most brightest spirit you could ever met.
Ariana and Rodney said they lost custody of Amari and his younger brother Levi in 2018. After Ariana lost her job, she was unable to find a new one, and the couple lost both their home and their transportation. Court documents show that CPS first became involved with the family in 2018 when Ariana was pregnant with Levi. CPS reports included in the case file mentioned an unstable home life and allegations of domestic violence between Ariana and Rodney. I should mention that I'm only using Levi's name because it was published in several Star Telegram articles featuring interviews with the boy's parents. Ariana did not disclose to most of her family that she had an open CPS case, let alone the fact that her children had been removed from her custody.
I've been going through a CPS case. My kids got taken. I've hid it from a lot of my family. They obviously found out. I hid it from all of my friends. I was ashamed. I never knew. I never wanted no one to know. I was going to get my kids back, and that was going to be that. That was going to be that. Nobody would have ever been the wiser, Nobody would have ever been the wiser that I didn't have my kids. Every time someone asks, where your kids at? They're with my mom right now. Yeah, when I have to run errands, or if they've been around my mom and they know that they're not with my mom, they're with their dad. Their dad has them right now, And I'll tell stories like as if I really had them, because I was really ashamed. I didn't ask for help from anyone. I wanted to do it on my own. I couldn't bear to explain to people that I wasn't able to do what I needed to do. I didn't want anybody to judge me. I was homeless, bouncing from place to place with my kid, and I was pregnant with another one. Couldn't plant my feet firmly on the ground. Every time I got a little bit comfortable, in a situation, got a little bit too comfortable because that wasn't my situation to be in, I was forced to move on. I went through a lot. I done been through a lot. Still going through a lot. My kids they're not currently in my custody.
While in state custody, the boys were shuffled from caregiver to caregiver, including Ariana's mother and an aunt briefly. But earlier this year, a judge ordered the children placed into the home of family friends DeAndre Foley and Joseph M. Delancey II.
Amari and Levi have been bouncing from place to place as well. They've been to 2 foster homes. They were with my aunt. They were with my mom. Different circumstances. They ended up with a man by the name of DeAndre Foley and his life partner, whose name is Joseph. I'm unsure of his last name, but they ended up there because DeAndre, he's known us for a while. He knew me when I was pregnant with Amari. Amari's father worked with him. He was his manager. Really good friend of mine, Amari's dad, and a really decent guy, you know what I'm saying? And I never met the life partner till they got involved in our case, saying that they would house our children. It was supposed to be a good little setup, and we really trusted these guys with our children, with our babies' lives.
Ariana said she and Rodney were both comfortable with the arrangement because she said,
we both thought we knew them.
Dion and Joseph were good friends with both Ariana and Rodney, and according to police, lived on the 1200 block of Dovercliff Court in Fort Worth, in an apartment complex Ariana said is called Taylor Commons. Rodney used to work with Dion and had been friends with him for over 12 years. Rodney does not believe his old friend could have injured Amari, but he wants whoever is responsible brought to justice. Police have not named the 2 men as suspects, but a Facebook group called Justice for Amari Boone is distributing flyers displaying the men's names and photos. Dion's Facebook page has been locked down, all of his photos and posts inaccessible to the public. Joseph's has evidently been deactivated. The Texas Department of Family and Protective Services said that background checks and home visits were conducted prior to the boys' placement in the Foley-Delancey home. The CPS caseworkers' notes indicate a home visit in December of 2019 was favorable and that during supervised visits, Amari and Levi adjusted well to the 2 men, who seemed to have a genuine love for children. The home was judged as a safe environment according to the caseworkers' notes after a January 2020 visit. The couple engaged well with the caseworker, were amenable to complying with department rules, and said they could get support from family if need be. The caseworker believed they would be wonderful caregivers to the 2 boys, and the department recommended them for temporary conservatorship. Cracks quickly began appearing in the couple's squeaky clean veneer. Soon after the boys were placed in their home, and just after the coronavirus quarantine began, Amari's parents said Joseph and Dion took Amari to the hospital with a sprained ankle they said he suffered from a fall down the stairs.
My son been knowing how to go upstairs since he could walk. He haven't ever fell down the stairs. He haven't ever fell down the stairs, not with me, not with his daddy, not with his family, nobody. But all of a sudden he get with y'all and he can't walk no more. He is falling downstairs.
In early March, during a visit with her kids, Ariana noticed Amari had fresh bruises, swollen eyes, and a swollen lip. She took photos to document the injuries.
I gave it to my CPS caseworker, I gave it to her supervisor, and I gave it to my boy's lawyer.
This may or may not have been the same visit the Star-Telegram described as taking place on March 7th, when, defying the provisions set forth by CPS, Dion and Joseph allowed Ariana and Rodney to take their sons for an unsupervised visit for several hours, during which Amari's caseworker did not know where the boy was or who he was with, according to her notes.
And I went and I picked my son up. It was on the weekend. I think it was Saturday. I picked him up on a Saturday and brought him over to my aunt's house so he could play with all the kids, because they don't really get to see him. Like, I visit Amari and Levi 1 time a week for 1 hour. But when I went to pick up Amari and Levi, both of his eyes are black. So I need this to get out. I need these people to be aware of the severity of this situation. So I'm saying, Amari, who did this to you? But I said, did somebody hit you? Yes. Did somebody hit you in the face? Yes. Who? I didn't say nobody's name. I took his shirt off. It reveals marks on his neck. Taking his shirt off reveals bruises on his ribs, all across, on his chest. Old bruises. But yeah, so I'm looking at Amari, and he's got all these bruises, so I take pictures. And I call his dad, and I tell his dad, and I send the picture to his dad. His dad calls Dion. Dion calls the CPS people as far as my caseworker, the boy's lawyer. And he's telling them that I kidnapped my son. Telling them I refused to bring him back. I hadn't talked to Dion. Why are you jumping the broom that fast like that? I send the pictures to my caseworker because eventually she calls me. And she's like, what's going on? Why wouldn't you? Why do you have the kids? Where are the kids now? Why would you go over there and get them? You know you're not supposed to do that. She was not concerned about my child having 2 black eyes, a busted lip. He had a cut right here. He could barely smile, barely talk. So we call everybody, and they're telling us to take him back to the people.
Rodney said, I had supervisors and caseworkers call and say that if I did not take him back, they were going to take legal action. He died about a month after I took him back to the home. Ariana and Rodney requested an investigation. Amari was evidently evaluated at Cook Children's, and although a report noted that the bruises were concerning, a removal order was not issued, and the boys remained in the care of Dion and Joseph. The men were instructed not to allow the boys' parents any unsupervised visits and to report all injuries, and the CPS caseworker promised Ariana she would increase her visits from once monthly to twice weekly to ensure the children's safety. It is unknown if she followed through with this promise. The next thing anyone knew, Amari was admitted to the hospital with extensive injuries and died on Easter Sunday. At the time of his arrival in the emergency room, doctors, according to Rodney, said the injuries had been going on for some time, for at least a month. He had been beaten over time. Ariana said that some of Amari's bruises were older than others. She requested documentation of his evaluation after the March 7th visit, but she was ignored. She said doctors were able to confirm to her that neither of her children was sexually assaulted. Ariana said, Cook Children said nothing is wrong with my children, but I don't believe that. Where's the paperwork to prove that? Nobody ever showed us any paperwork. Everybody just saying, yeah, we took him and he's okay. This detail is heartbreaking. While Amari remained in a coma, his family was assured DeAndre Foley had been arrested and Joseph Delancey II would be next.
They haven't even caught the guy that actually did it. They got Dion, the one that was the face of the case, the face of their relationship as far as making decisions. Dion, they got him already because he had to take him to the hospital. He had a seizure at home. He had to take him to the hospital. So they got him at the hospital. I don't know his last name, girl, but he's a tall, black, and he's still out there. He called to taunt Amari's father. He called him on Facebook and said, is Amari all right? I could have just fell over because the police told me they had him in custody. But he's a tall, black guy. He's really skinny. He has glasses. He has a ponytail. His dark skin. He's probably about 6'1".
Neither of the men was in custody. To date, no one has been arrested or charged in Amari's death. After Amari died, Rodney spoke with Dion. He tried to explain to me that he didn't know about this, that he had nothing to do with this. I wasn't buying the story. I just think he knew more about it than he said he did. After an autopsy performed by the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office, Amari's death was determined to have been caused by blunt force trauma to the head and was ruled a homicide. According to family members, both of Amari's arms and several of his fingers were broken, and he suffered from fractured ribs, a fractured pelvis, multiple bruises, and severe bleeding in the left side of his brain. Had Amari survived, Ariana said she was told, he would have spent the rest of his life with a tracheotomy and a feeding tube. He could never breathe again on his own. Ariana believes her son would still be alive if CPS had listened to her.
I think they failed.
Yeah,
they failed miserably.
Um,
Because I gave them the information they needed and the pictures that I have.
Rodney said that injuries did not begin appearing on Amari until the self-quarantine recommendations were made in mid-March. The last time he saw his son was during a video chat session on April 8th, during which he noticed Amari had a black eye and swelling in his face. 2 days later, Rodney received a call from Cook Children's saying Amari had suffered a seizure. He said, "It was a hard pill to swallow at the moment." Amari's lawyer received a call the same day from his CPS caseworker who said the little boy had been taken to the emergency room, that he was not feeling well the previous evening, and that he might have been running a fever. According to Rodney, Dion and Joseph told doctors that Amari's injuries were caused by another fall, but the doctors said the injuries were too severe to be explained away by a fall, appearing more consistent with injuries someone might incur in a car accident.
My son, he has brain damage. I don't know what they hit him with, but they hit him so hard that the brain damage that he has is the same equivalent of brain damage as if someone got in a car crash. Both his arms are broken. All his fingers are broken. I don't understand how you could be so evil and heartless. My son is only 3. He's having small seizures, which is not a good thing. Not a good thing, but that means that he's not brain dead.
Rodney said, "Every time I saw my son, he had a different injury. If they had been visiting him like they said they were, they would have seen something. But they told us they never found anything wrong." CPS is working on the investigation into Amari's death in conjunction with the Fort Worth Police Crimes Against Children Unit. 19-month-old Levi was removed from the Foley Delancey home on the evening of April 10th when it was reported that Amari had bleeding on the brain and would not likely survive. Levi was placed into foster care and, following an evaluation at Cook Children's, was determined to be uninjured. Ariana, who's no longer romantically involved with Rodney, gave birth to a baby boy earlier this year, but since his name hasn't been publicized, I won't include it in this episode. The baby is in Ariana's custody, although she said CPS tried to trick her into letting them become involved in her third son's life as well. Ariana was none too impressed with the CPS caseworker assigned to oversee her son.
Y'all are child protective services, and you failed to protect a child.
Ariana said she has not been homeless in months and has been following every request CPS made of her as she attempted to regain custody of her children, but they continuously turned her down.
This just goes to show you that people don't do your kids the way you do your kids. And I was doing all my classes. I was doing my services, taking every drug test they asked of me. It wasn't good enough for them. I got my own apartment. I had a car. I didn't have a job, but I got plenty of family support. I have food stamps. So my 2 that eat food, they is gonna eat.
CPS, however, described Ariana and Rodney as financially and emotionally fragile, making note of the past allegations of domestic violence between the two. The CPS report stated that Rodney said there was no violence between himself and Ariana. In contrast, the report notes that Ariana described the couple's domestic violence incidents as frequent and physical, saying he would hit her and she would hit him to defend herself. In 2018, Ariana tested positive for marijuana at prenatal visits in May and July, and then again in August, while in the hospital to deliver Levi. She was reported to CPS for regularly using marijuana in front of Amari, who was 2 at the time, while heavily pregnant. Ariana said, "The system is not for the people. We're nothing but paperwork for them. They're not molding this system to different people's personalities. They have a blueprint where they treat everyone the same. Stay woke because there's always someone watching you. Have faith and walk with God." Rodney has been charged with several offenses in the past few years. According to court records, he was convicted in 2017 of the reckless discharge of a firearm and sentenced to 200 days in jail. That follows a 2002 conviction for assault, which landed him in jail for 35 days. Rodney told the Star-Telegram, "They can bring up all the negative stuff they want, but none of that is an excuse for my son getting killed." I have to say, I agree with him. A GoFundMe campaign was created by Amari's aunt, Chastity Boozer, to help pay for Amari's funeral and burial. However, the campaign, which raised $2,814, has since been disabled. It was reported by someone who said that because Amari was in the custody of the state at the time of his death, the state will pay for the funeral arrangements, alleging the family should therefore not be asking for donations. In the campaign, Chastity describes Amari as the smartest, intriguing, funniest kid in the world, a loving, happy baby whose life was cut short at the hands of unfit foster parents. She also said he loved making people happy and bringing joy. Amari was laid to rest on Friday, April 24th, in a small, private ceremony with close family and friends in attendance. The Star-Telegram made a poignant video on the day of Amari's memorial.
Got a call, was it April 10th? I believe it was April 10th, we got a call saying my son was in the hospital. He had just had a seizure, and so we came up there. Doctors brought us in, and they set us down.
Doctor starts explaining to us about his head injuries and that he had blood in the left side of his brain and it was full and kind of started to get numb. And then he told us that it was irreversible and it was fatal and we lost it. They tried to keep us in the room, but the room got too small. I couldn't breathe.
They explained to us about the broken arms and the fingers and the fractured pelvis, and they said that the injuries had different healing processes, so it's happening over time.
My baby was hooked up to all types of machines and tubes and had a neck brace on.
He fought for about 2 days, and he died on Easter Sunday morning.
He was with a friend of me and his father. They were housing our children for us because they've been in foster homes and different things like that. So they were housing our children for us so that we could be a little bit closer to our kids.
All of these injuries to him started happening around the time, like I said, when this virus started, where we were unable to visit him. But I feel like if this virus stuff never happened and we were still visiting him frequently, that it would have been a better chance that he had survived.
It's ridiculous on how you could just destroy the most perfect person. And I know we're not perfect, but man, Amari was perfect. He really was. Awesome kid.
We all think we're incapable of child abuse and condemn those who harm children for good reason, but let's look at it from the other side for a moment. Let me be clear, I am not making excuses for anyone or trying to justify any type of child abuse. I just want to raise awareness of how lines can blur and slopes can become slippery with very little warning. I would never is a dangerous way of thinking about child abuse and neglect. Helpguide.org, which provides information on mental health and wellness, has a great article about the subject. Among other information, it tackles some myths and facts about child abuse and neglect that I will quote here. Myth: only bad people abuse their children. Fact: not all abusive parents or guardians intentionally harm their children. Many have been victims of abuse themselves and don't know any other way to parent. Others may be struggling with mental health issues or substance abuse problems. Myth: abuse doesn't happen in good families. Fact: abuse and neglect doesn't only happen in poor families or bad neighborhoods. These behaviors cross all racial, economic, and cultural lines. Sometimes families who seem to have it all from the outside are hiding a different story behind closed doors. Myth: most child abusers are strangers. Fact: while abuse by strangers does happen, most abusers are family members or others close to the family. Myth: abused children always grow up to be abusers. Fact: it is true that abused children are more likely to repeat the cycle as adults, unconsciously repeating what they experienced as children. On the other hand, many adult survivors of child abuse have a strong motivation to protect their children against what they went through and become excellent parents. Among other risk factors for child abuse and neglect, helpguide.org cites stress and lack of support. During this stressful time, we're all susceptible to feeling like we're overwhelmed and alone. The article says, parenting can be a very time-intensive, stressful job, especially if you're raising children without support from family and friends, or if you're dealing with relationship problems or financial difficulties. Caring for a child with a disability, special needs, or difficult behaviors is also a challenge. It's important to get the support you need so you are emotionally and physically able to support your child. I can't even begin to tell you how strongly I feel about that segment of the article. I'm raising and currently quarantined with a child with a variety of diagnoses, special needs, and difficult behaviors, who is not only bright, loving, intelligent, and wickedly funny, but also irritable, easily triggered, and volatile, so I fully understand how difficult it can be. I can also tell you from years of personal experience that there is help available. Don't hesitate to reach out to someone, be it your child's pediatrician, a psychiatrist, or a therapist. That's a good starting point. In New Jersey and Pennsylvania, another place to start would be Perform Care, a care management organization focusing on prevention and early intervention by connecting a young person with the care they need in the most appropriate setting. My child's mental health providers helped connect us with Perform Care, which among many other things set us up with family support, in-home therapy, and a CMO worker who assisted with my child's placement in various programs and even advocated for my child in IEP and other school meetings. I am eternally grateful for the services they provided and, as a result, the progress my child and, by extension, my family has made. Also essential in that progress is my personal therapist, who helped me weather the end stages of an abusive relationship while dealing with my child's increasingly difficult and frustrating behaviors and everything that resulted from both. She helped me drill deeper into my well of inner strength anytime I thought it had completely run dry, and she also taught me many skills to use to cope with my challenges, skills I was subsequently able to teach my kids. Shout out to you, Susan. Another excellent resource my therapist shared with me was Family Connections, a New Jersey nonprofit organization supporting families facing difficult challenges. Through that organization, I found a support and education group that taught me even more specific skills I have been able to use to help my child, including radical acceptance, which was the most difficult for me. I have to give a shout out to the leaders of that group as well. Thank you, Marcy and Joe. Every state has resources like these. Reach out to a mental health professional for help connecting with yours. Dr. Partap, who I mentioned earlier, also recommends reaching out to family and friends who have children to check in and offer support. She said, "We can offer help, a listening ear, or even just empathy for a parent who is struggling." For everyone, but especially for parents and caregivers, it's essential that we recognize when we're struggling and, I can't emphasize this enough, ask for help. I've had to learn this lesson the hard way, so let me impart it on you. There is no shame in asking for help. It does not mean you're weak or inferior or a bad parent. It means you're human. It's actually a sign of strength. It shows you care enough to want to be better, to do better for your children and for yourself. We all get stressed out. How we cope with that stress is the most important thing. Dr. Kaufman said, "Stress is not an excuse for abusing your child, but rather we hope that caregivers can recognize their stress and ask for help, rather than accelerate dangerous behaviors, and that others can recognize and intervene as well." It's important to recognize the signs of abusive behavior in yourself. The helpguide.org article I quoted earlier lists the following warning signs that you may be close to crossing that line. 1. You can't stop your anger. What starts as a swat on the backside may turn into multiple hits, getting harder and harder. You may shake your child more and more and finally throw them down. You find yourself screaming louder and louder and can't stop yourself. 2. You feel emotionally disconnected from your child. You may feel so overwhelmed that you don't want anything to do with your child. You just want to be left alone and for your child to be quiet. 3. Meeting the daily needs of your child seems impossible. While everyone struggles with balancing dressing, feeding, and getting kids to school or other activities, if you continually can't manage to do it, it's a sign that something might be wrong. 4. Other people have expressed concern. It may be easy to bristle at other people expressing concern. However, consider carefully what they have to say. Are the words coming from someone you normally respect and trust? From various sources and personal experience, some tips on managing stress during this unprecedented quarantine include: stay in contact with family, friends, and neighbors by phone, social media, video chat, or other technology, even just for a few minutes a day. Take part in healthy activities. Exercise, go outside, take a walk, play with your pets or your kids. Do things that make you happy. Find joy. As I mentioned in last week's episode, I didn't realize how much I needed to laugh until I took an hour and sat down to watch Chris D'Elia's new stand-up comedy special, No Pain, and literally wore myself out laughing. Do what makes you feel good. Read, write, play video or mobile games, watch comedy or listen to it on Pandora, check out funny YouTube videos, go outside and look under rocks for salamanders, whatever puts a smile on your face. Prioritize. Your to-do list may look daunting, especially with kids at home, but putting it in order can put it into perspective. Set a routine at home. I created one for my kids that I've been doing my best to stick to because it helps both me and them maintain some kind of normalcy. It doesn't have to be elaborate or color-coded. Sorry, Pinterest. I scrawled mine down on a piece of paper and then copied it out onto a chalkboard that I have on the wall so my kids can see it and know what time they're expected to do what each day. When you need help, ask for it. Every therapist I know is offering virtual or telephone appointments that insurance is covering the same as it would in-person visits. Some are even waiving copays at this point. Walk away. If your kids are driving you nuts, first ensure their safety. Obviously, don't leave them unattended in the bathtub or anything like that. But once you've done that, then step outside, upstairs, downstairs, into the bathroom, onto the deck, into your car, or wherever you can take a few minutes of relative peace and quiet. Sometimes that's all you need to reset, at least temporarily. Take your medication. If you're on any type of prescription medication for any mental health condition, don't skip doses. Don't let your prescription lapse. If you're not feeling like yourself, it might be time to talk to your doctor. Medical doctors these days are also doing appointments virtually. Don't use alcohol or drugs to cope. That's a dangerously slippery slope that has led to the deaths of many of the kids I've talked about on this podcast. Use healthy coping skills. They're also known as coping mechanisms, grounding techniques, self-soothing techniques, and things like that. There are a million of these, and almost anything can be a coping skill if it helps you. I keep some of these things handy wherever I go, and I've made multiple baskets and bins of coping skills for my kids to use. The key is using your senses to distract yourself and reroute your mind. Here are some examples of how to do that. Mindfulness exercises. One mindfulness exercise I use all the time and even taught my kids to use is the countdown technique, which I learned in my Family Connections support group and employs all 5 senses. It has helped us many, many times. You can even use it while driving. Basically, what you do is you take a deep breath, then you look around for 5 things that you can see and either say them out loud or name them to yourself in your head. For example, you could say, I see my lamp, I see my spoon, I see a cup on the table, I see my picture frame, I see my phone. Next, you pay attention to your body and think of 4 things that you can feel. And again, say them out loud or to yourself in your head. So you can either use your fingers to touch different textures, like I feel my sweater, I feel my feet warm in my slippers, I feel my hair falling against my neck, I feel the couch behind my back. And then you listen for 3 sounds. It could be the sound of the lawnmower outside, the sound of your child's music from his bedroom, or the sound of the water running in the bathroom. Say those 3 things to yourself. Next, 2 things you can smell. It's okay, you can move to another spot if you need to. Pick up a candle and sniff that, or bring your baby close to your face and smell her hair, anything like that. If you can't smell anything at the moment or you can't move from where you are, then just name your favorite 2 smells to yourself. And taste. Say 1 thing you can taste, either the cup of tea in front of you or maybe the toothpaste from brushing your teeth. If you can't taste anything, again, say your favorite thing to taste and then take another deep breath. You'll probably find that you're a lot calmer after doing this. Back to my list of coping skills, another one would be aromatherapy. You can either use candles or oils, lotions. There's even diffuser necklaces and bracelets available on Amazon. I have 1, if not more, of each in my house right now. Another would be to change your temperature. Take a hot bath, splash cold water on your face, drink a hot cup of coffee, use a heat or cold pack. Do breathing exercises, meditation or yoga, adult coloring, listen to music. Putty, slime, or Play-Doh is a good one. Fidget spinners or cubes or any other small toy. Facials, skincare masks, or any type of self-care. Galaxy bottles. Weighted blankets are good. Squishies. Puzzles like word searches, crosswords, Sudoku, jigsaw puzzles, anything like that. Blow bubbles. You can chew gum, pop a mint or a hard candy into your mouth, or use a drink packet that you can mix into your water bottle. It's just basically derailing your brain by putting a different flavor into your mouth. Honestly, give it a try the next time you're feeling a little upset or out of control or overwhelmed. You might be surprised how much these actually help. I'm also going to list a few resources to keep handy. Keep in mind that many of these are available to U.S. residents only. But for those outside the U.S., help is just a quick Google search or a conversation with your doctor away. The first is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration's Disaster Distress Helpline, which offers 24/7, 365 days per year immediate crisis counseling for people experiencing emotional distress related to any natural or human-made disaster. That would include this current COVID crisis. The SAMHSA is a government agency leading public health efforts to advance the behavioral health of the nation. You can reach their helpline at 800-985-5990. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is available 24/7 to provide free and confidential support for people in distress, as well as prevention and crisis resources for you or your loved ones. You can speak with someone by calling 800-273-8255 or connect with a counselor through their online Lifeline chat service. Crisis Text Line provides 24/7 crisis counseling via text message. Simply text HOME, HOME, to the number 741-741 to connect with a crisis counselor. Childhelp.org aims to help victims of child abuse through education, treatment, and prevention programs. You can call or text them at 800-4A-CHILD or 800-422-4453, or even live chat with a support specialist on their website. I mentioned childhelp.org recently in my blog post and podcast episode about Amy Deal. The lead investigator on Amy's case, Greg McKay, is now the organization's chief operating officer. I have tremendous respect for him and the organization. Helpandhope.org offers advice and resources to parents for the daily challenges of raising children, including parenting tips, fun ideas for kids, and obviously help and hope. Helpguide.org, which I also mentioned earlier, helps you help yourself by showing you how to start improving your mental health and wellness today. The National Institute of Mental Health, NIMH, is a bottomless well of information and resources. The NIMH is the lead federal agency for research on mental disorders and provides education on a variety of mental health disorders as well as resources, clinical trials, and much more. Their website is www.nimh.nih.gov. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for the millions of Americans affected by mental illness. Their website is nami.org. I'll include links in the show notes to the resources I've mentioned. More than anything, Amari's family wants justice. Ariana told a reporter,
I have to make sure that my son rests in peace, and I talk to him all the time and tell him that I'm here. I'm still here. I love you. I never left your side, and I believed you from the jump, and we're going to get justice for you.
Rodney told the Star-Telegram, I'm just really trying to seek out justice for my son. I want my son's voice to be heard because he can't speak out anymore. He was a beautiful, bright child who did not deserve this. I want his voice to be heard. Amari's Aunt Chastity said, Justice needs to be served. Someone needs to be held responsible. The system failed yet another child. A petition titled Justice for Amari Boone has been created on change.org. Once the petition receives 25,000 signatures, it will be delivered to Fort Worth Police Chief Ed Krause, Tarrant County District Attorney Sharon Wilson, and Texas Governor Greg Abbott. The petition decries the fact that no one has been arrested in Amari's death and states that justice needs to be served. A group known as the Brotherhood Movement has declared their support for Amari's family and their intention to seek justice for Amari. Members of the Fort Worth group have been in attendance at vigils for Amari as well as his funeral service. Just in my humble opinion, I want justice for Amari as badly as anyone else does, but I'm willing to bet the Fort Worth police aren't sitting on their thumbs. There are many steps to be taken, boxes to be checked, I's to be dotted, and T's to be crossed before charges can be filed. If charges are pressed hastily without the evidence in order to back them up, they can be dropped and then we may never see justice for Amari, and no one wants that. According to Sergeant Rachel DeHoyos of the Fort Worth Police Department Crimes Against Children Unit, a search warrant was executed early in the case at the apartment where Amari and Levi lived with Dion and Joseph. A second search warrant was served on April 16th. Sergeant DeHoyos said there was a huge amount of evidence to examine from the scene, as well as medical records, social history, and CPS reports. In addition, several interviews have to be reviewed and transcribed, and detectives need the medical examiner's final autopsy report before a case can be built. In cases where there is no smoking gun, extensive work must be put into making a child homicide case. It also must be acknowledged that, as egregious as this case is, it's not the only one of its kind investigators are working on right now. The Fort Worth PD CACU opened 4 child fatality investigations during the 6-week span between March 21st and April 28th alone. One of those investigations was cleared with no finding of foul play, but the investigations into Amari's case, as well as Erika Taylor's and Stetson Blackwell's, continue. In addition to those fatality cases, there have been countless investigations opened by the CACU involving crimes against surviving children. Referring to multiple news articles in late March quoting staff from Cook Children's Medical Center about the possible correlation between child abuse cases and stress from the COVID-19 pandemic, Sergeant De Hoyos said, "We have actually received additional leads in our public email as a result of the news coverage. My detectives are working many long hours without days off to prepare these cases. Although each case has a lead detective, every detective in CACU has helped out and is still helping out in putting these cases together in hopes of a successful prosecution. It is our mission, and we are committed to advocating for these children and to hold accountable those that would hurt these blessed souls." For now, as much as it pains us, we should try to be patient and let the authorities do their jobs. Until charges are filed, let's focus on keeping Amari's memory alive. This sweet, happy, utterly beautiful 3-year-old boy with a brilliant smile, fantastic head of hair, gorgeous brown eyes, and a bottomless pit for a tummy must never be forgotten.
Amari don't want to do nothing but watch PJ Masks and eat. That's it. Food, something to drink, that and some TV. You give him your phone or turn the TV on. Any cartoon, but his favorite is PJ Masks. You give him any type of anything. Amari is a very unique child. Amari can entertain himself. Before Levi came and all my other friends started having kids, and Amari be right there with me, watch TV in our apartment, and just be chilling, relaxing.
Ariana said, "He was just an awesome kid and didn't deserve this at all." Anyone with information on Amari's case should contact Fort Worth Police at 817-332-5036 or Fort Worth PD CACU at fortworthtexas.gov. I'll include their contact information in the show notes as well. Rest in peace, Amari. That's it for this week, guys. I hope you found this episode informative. Please share it with anyone you think would benefit from it. I posted 2 separate articles on Suffer the Little Children blog at the end of last week, one about Amari and the other about child abuse during quarantine, so feel free to share either or both of those on social media as well. Anytime you like, share, comment, or otherwise engage on social media or on any of the listening platforms, it helps me out tremendously, so I truly appreciate it. Thank you all for listening. Join me next week for another case. Please subscribe to Suffer the Little Children on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast listening app. You can also subscribe on YouTube by searching Suffer the Little Children Podcast. Visit the website at sufferthelittlechildrenpod.com, where you can listen to episodes, leave a voicemail, and become a patron for rewards ranging from a shout-out by name on the show to exclusive show merch. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Tumblr at Suffer the Little Children Pod, and on Twitter at STLC Pod. I've posted a photo album for today's case on Facebook and Instagram. Email tips, comments, questions, or case suggestions to sufferthelittlechildren.pod@gmail.com. You can also read about today's case as well as many others at sufferthelittlechildrenblog.com. This podcast was written and produced by Lane. Music and sound effects for the show were created using sounds from audiojungle.com. Always remember, hug your babies a bit closer tonight. Until next week, bye guys.